Hi, welcome to EtherWire, your quintessential plugin for personal and business growth. I am Jyoti Rai. Thank you for joining me in Ether Features. We are here to take you through a very rare journey which most of the women out there are wanting to know. Now, what is this story? This is the story of being an independent director on a listed company's board. Now that sounds full of responsibility, isn't it? Well, yes. This is the role that got opened up because of effective regulations coming to its play. I'm talking about 2013 when landmark regulations were created to bring more ethical benchmarks, better governance, risk and transparency on the listed company's board. So what happened? Regulator came forward and said and shared that now is the time to bring diversity to the board. This is the time to bring women on the boards of listed companies. And this time the women were market participants, industry professionals with decades of experience under their belt. So that's where the journey started. Some of the women took this regulation in their stride. They went on to become board of directors. They shepherded the board in the direction of better ethical and governance practices. Today, I have one of the board directors that is going to share her journey of prior to board experience and post board. We will be having a rare conversation to know behind the scene of a journey of an independent director. The guest joining me today is co-founder of RB Foundation. She is CEO of Indian Deaf Cricket Association and she is a woman of big heart, popularly known as tall, awkward, but never shy to open any door. Today she is going to be sharing the behind the scene of how she got into a listed company's board, her journey before and after. Thank you so much for joining in, and this is a fan moment for me to have you back on the show, and I hope I'm ready for this interview.
Thank you, Jyoti. I think I'm equally excited to be here on your show, which is very different, I think.
So Roma ji, there's lots to talk, and there are listeners who have been wanting to know what did Roma ji did to prepare for a board role and how significant this regulation itself is for Indian corporates and women in general.
I think if I look back and I go back in time, this was when I was part of the Mahindra Group. I was in a leadership role over there. I was the Chief Communications Officer. And during that time, when you're working for an ethical organization like Mahindra, you really learn a lot. And that's when I realized I was earlier in Norway. I was working as a director in one of the pan-European companies, where there was a lot of talk about ethics and governance. So I came with that background. My husband happened to be in a company which was a Norwegian classification foundation. And for them, it was very important to manage risk. They used to, of course, manage risk for business. But having that proximity at home and conversations at home, you learn a lot about risk and governance. Coming back to India, that time India was booming. I had left India in 2003 and I came back in 2005. I saw a different India. And that was when I joined the Mahindra Group. Everybody was telling me it's a tractor company. How are you going to manage in a company like that? I was surprised to see the governance in that organization. And I said that the people behind that organization are more professional and not with a promoter mindset. And that really led me into working in that organization and bringing in global best practices for communication. And the difference was that I changed the rules of the game because I said communication is not about just having press releases. It's understanding business, being part of business, and being proactively giving your inputs into that business and what is the goal of that organization. I think that led to the fact that I was invited to be part of their budgeting sessions with all our different businesses. You learn a lot over there and you learn a lot about regulation. and you learn a lot about Indian regulation because they were a listed company. And they had many such sub-businesses which needed to really adhere to those rules and regulation. From there, I moved on when I realized that to be an independent director was not in my sight at that point in time. Let's be frank about it. But one of our directors wanted to close a company which was part of the Mahindra Group, and they wanted somebody to be part of the board process. That is when I learned the entire board process and what it takes to look after the shareholders, because those shareholders need their money back, and to find them and to close the company and have the board meetings was a huge learning for me. I think that was the first step, or maybe Providence helped me to be there, and it set the ball rolling for me in the future that I can be a board member. So that was the introduction to working in a board as a board member, but it was part of the organization. So you're not an independent board member, but you are a board member.
At that time, you mentioned that just the sheer interest from your side to participate in a responsibility, it's a larger responsibility. At that time, there is no sight of being on a board yourself.
Not at all.
Because
not at all.
I remember when we started our career, we couldn't have fathom about being an independent director at that stage, So your exposure to preparing for board or the whole board processes was one of the foundations that you kind of set yourself for. Okay.
I think as I said, that there was an opportunity, and I always never lose an opportunity. And this was a very good opportunity. And I said to myself that this is a learning curve for me. And if I'm going to step back and say, I don't know this, having been a communicator, having known all the regulation of a listed company, when you're in front of all your shareholders, I cannot step back because I knew the rules and regulations. That helped me, and that's how we closed the company very effectively, and that was a great learning for me. Let's move on. Continued with the Mahindra Group. It was a great decade of learning, great decade of understanding ethics and governance. And also, because you are part of the leadership and you are a key management personnel, you have to adhere to those regulations. So that was a great learning opportunity for me. I always tell women that you're not typecast into anything. What you're going to learn and what you're going to use it for in the future, you don't know. But make sure that you're no different from what a man does. And that was something which was very clear with me in my mind, because I think I was born and brought up in a family where there was no difference between a man and a woman, and no difference between us as children, whether it was my brother or whether it was me. So I never came with that mindset that there can be a difference, while I understand that there can be a difference. The glass ceiling is always there for women, so you work a little harder, but it never deterred me. And you create an aura around you, you create your boundaries. And I think I did that very unconsciously.
I remember an instant where you made it very clear to the board that old jokes you can't crack anymore.
Absolutely. When we were having that conversation, I think that was just to trip me, because this was in 2015, just after the regulation came. How did I get that board position? I mean, I'm in a serving job. I'm a senior executive with one of the largest mining company. Why would a person select me? We were two women who were professionals. One was with a consulting company, a large consulting company, global consulting company. And the other was me. Why was I chosen? I think one is also your power of network. Who's the network that you're really engaging with? Are they professionals? Are they directors? Who are they? My husband was in a corporate job. He was at a senior level. So you do hobnob with all the right kind of company executives. One such company executive, who was an MD of a company, thought that they need a lot of help in branding, communication, and that's when he thought that I was a good fit for it. When he came to me, I told him, but I'm working in an organization. It's not easy for me to take on a board job. He said, I would like you to meet my people. Once you're selected, then you think about it. So yes, I got selected between the two. And when he gave me that good news, I said, now how do I tackle what I have to tackle within my organization? But I must give credit to Mr. Agarwal and the whole board, because they said that for us it is also a matter of pride that our serving executive is now going to become an independent women director.
Wow.
I saw that in a way because my CEO promoted me to the board in that context. So I give the CEO credit for positioning it right.
Right.
That's where I started, and I think I was one of the first serving executive, and this was in 2015. In fact, I have just stepped down in October after 2 stints of 5 years, because SEBI's rules are that you can do 2 5-year stints from this company called John Cockerell India. It is an Indian subsidiary of a Belgian company, again into steel manufacturing, cold rolling mills for the steel industry. Again, over there, when I joined, I think we were one of the few first women directors. So you do face those kind of situations where the men are not used to having a woman on the board.
Yes.
So on a lighter note, when we were having dinner, because I was being introduced to the board of directors, one of them quipped saying that now we can't share the jokes that we normally do on a lunch table. And I'm sure, can we do it? Would you mind? So I said, certainly I would mind.
Yes.
And I did need to set the boundaries at that point in time. So they said, oh, so we have to be very careful of our P's and Q's. I said, you do. That's something which goes without saying. And I think if you do that and you set these boundaries, people respect you. And they understand that you're here for a purpose. You're not just going to be sitting in a board where you don't talk or you don't give your views. They haven't called you for that. Also, there is a pivot in the board proceedings, because they look at mere numbers. Here is a woman who's bringing a different perspective, bringing in business responsibility, but with a lot of empathy and compassion. Looks at it with a whole mind rather than looking at it with one left brain or right brain, which is what the men do. And they think linear. We don't. We think larger. We see things very differently.
Yes.
So that was an uphill task. But I must say they respected my opinions. They valued it, and they actually then set the rules of the game differently in their organization, which I must say the India organization gave a head start to the global organization, that this is something India is looking at and Indian companies looking at. Why can't we do it at a global level? So we set the benchmark.
Wow.
So I think those were very good milestones to achieve when you are the first woman director amongst all these men.
Yes.
But we had expat directors who were very open-minded. And visiting them in Belgium, seeing how the organization is, very male-dominated, yes, because the industry is such, but I think it soon changed.
I think that what I'm hearing is two phenomenal stuff coming out of this conversation is boundaries and benchmark. Boundaries, because when Roma went on to head boards, she set up good boundaries that we are the beneficiaries of. Stopping where things can go really wrong. I think you set fantastic boundaries, and it starts with that casual sideline fun, and it overrides in your meetings because you can be casual. And I thank you for taking those stands. As I said, we are the beneficiary. The other is benchmark. There were benchmarks existing, but the benchmark wasn't benchmarks against someone. Now you have a woman on the board and you have your own benchmarks to set and enhance the benchmark for what you've been brought in. The journey of keeping the company on direction towards better governance, transparency, and investors' interests being protected. How did that part happen?
See, as an independent director, the primary role is to always look after the interest of the minority shareholder. And remember, in organizations like these, the majority shareholders are the promoters themselves, right? And for us, it's very important that as independent directors, that we understand the minority shareholders' wants and what are they looking from this organization. And when we go for the AGM, we know what they want and we must protect their interest. Also, at the same time, we wanted to change some of the board proceedings because we felt that we need to know more on strategy. We need to have long-term goals. We don't want the board proceedings to be so tactical or operational. That is left to the CEO. Now, the difference between what a board can handle and what a CEO should be handling, sometimes there's a blur in that. We are happy to give you all counsel, we are happy to give you all direction, but you have to take the responsibility.
You brought a very interesting point, the CEO and the board and the blurring of lines. Let's talk about financials in the board meeting. Women directors, how have they been processing the financial numbers and crunching, which is very important from a balance sheet perspective and revenue and other things, provisions, especially it talks about key numbers. How was that conversation referring to numbers? Was it easy for you?
I think yes, I had the disadvantage. I must be frank about it, because they had put me in a slot. They said that you are going to be looking at CSR, branding, communication, which are the soft skills which are required and which are very important
skills
as well.
Yeah.
But I said, if you have to earn the respect of your fellow board members, if you don't understand numbers, you don't understand business, or you don't do your homework well, I always tell every independent women director that please do your homework, because the time is before, when you get the board papers. Like I have my board meeting coming up. I have gone through every paper in detail. I know what questions I need to ask, and I would not stop at asking those questions. They are difficult questions, but the board appreciates it, the promoters appreciate it, because they want that feedback. If they don't get that feedback, then how can they improve? How can the growth come if you don't understand financial numbers? And what is the industry actually about? So you have to do a lot of your own homework about the industry. It's not just about the organization. You must know, apart from all the subcommittees that we have, which is, as I told you earlier, the audit committee is very important because it actually runs the entire board proceedings. It's before you have the final board meeting, it becomes easier there. I think the other committees are equally important, and for me, stakeholder committee was very important because the minority shareholder is, gives us feedback in that committee, right? And we take that very seriously. Today, I feel CSR has come to age because we had the 2% directive from the Companies Act again. And that has really catapulted organizations' business responsibility, which has morphed into now what is known as ESG.
Right.
And why ESG? The governance part becomes very important for finance professionals to understand the impact that it has on the balance sheet as compared to in the past. Because I've had situations in a board conversation that say, okay, sustainability, we'll look at it later, but that's not it. I said sustainability will pivot your bottom line. Why don't you realize that that is something which is, must have the conversation now? And you must get the organization working towards it. And we actually did that. The first annual report that they had brought out after my coming in and insisting on all these parameters to be evaluated, they got an external agency on board so that they can go through the learnings. They didn't even know how that has to be approached. And that's when they understood why the governance part is so important for environment and social impact. It's not just environment and social impact, but environment impacts your business.
Yes.
And people. The people will stay in your organization when they see there is more care and empathy for people, for the environment, and for the community at large. And I think that is something where you set benchmarks in any board. And if a forward-looking board looks at it, which I'm very pleased that John Cockrell did that, and today they have excellent benchmarks.
What is the risk the social media etiquettes of leaders or directors can impact the reputation of a company?
You know, way back I was talking to a group of 100 professionals, and this was at the back of the World Economic Forum in Davos, and we were 100 professionals together. And Anand Mahindra had just started his Twitter handle some time back. In those days, when I was working in that organization, and I knew how particular he was when he would send out a tweet, or whether he would give any direction to anybody, and he would always, quip that you get unfiltered feedback from the world at large, and why not? And if I get a feedback which is a complaint of my organization or of any product, I would like to tell my colleague right up there. So the question came to me when I was talking about the Mahindra Group and what we do, and one of the Italian gentlemen who was also into a lot of digital space said, "We have seen Mr. Mahindra's reply to one of the customer complaints saying that, Mr. Vivek, somebody, please attend to this complaint." Was it that Mr. Mahindra wrote it himself, or does he have a team? You're the communications head. Do you manage that handle for him? I said, you would be surprised. That is one handle we have no control over. That's his own. He's a busy executive, yes, but for him, this is the unfiltered way of getting information, getting feedback, and I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be also replying back to any such negative feedback or a feedback for creating the atmosphere that we are ethical, we are open, we are transparent, and we follow good governance.
Are you putting some guidelines on social media etiquettes, the basic hygienes for all the key stakeholders?
We do. Every organization now does it. All the big groups have done it. There's a social media policy, and which is why there's also a limitation of some of the employees which are at the mid-level that they cannot speak about the organization. Let their personal handles be personal. We cannot govern that, but they cannot speak about the organization. If there's something they need to speak, it has to be channelized through the communications department, vetted over there, and then you can go out. But for the senior members, they've been told, because they have their certain areas of expertise. You speak on that. If it's our finance manager and he has to tell at a certain point that this has been our growth, this has been our numbers, but that comes only after it has gone to SEBI and it's out in the open. So you follow these kind of rules and regulations. Every listed company does it now.
Right.
They have no choice.
Now that you have sat on so many boards, what is few learnings that you can share with the audiences who are preparing for their board journey ahead?
I think the first thing people have to understand, or women who are future leaders have to understand, that it's not going to be that you end a career and start another career and get onto a board. Because mostly what happens is that you retire from an organization, then you're brought in because of the experience and the expertise that you bring in. And of course the diversity, because that's part and parcel of the new rules of the game. But what's important is what has led you to it. Where has your career moved? What has been your career graph? What have you concentrated on? How have you contributed to the organization's growth? For example, when I joined Mahindra's, it was a $2 billion company. I'm not saying that I was instrumental in the total growth journey, but I was definitely part of that journey. And having communicated that in the right manner, with the right reputation, with the right transparency and governance, with all the safeguards, the company grew to $20 billion company when I superannuated. So that's a sense of pride that you get, that your leadership journey has only grown. And why? Because you've empowered people.
So far, your board experience, how has been the reception of the promoters and founders on the other side?
So first of all, the first board that I was, it was professionally run, while the expat were actually not the owners or promoters, but they were representing them. But what I liked about them was they were very open-minded, because they didn't know India. They didn't know the Indian industry. So they were open to learn. They didn't know the regulations. They were open to learn. So I think when you have a professional board, because they were all professionals, but they were representing the promoters, right? So one was a CFO, one was the head of operations, one was a mining expert, one was a steel expert. So when they come with that kind of gravitas, it is a board which is very wholesome and a very forward-looking board. So there it was much easier to manage their expectations and make them understand first India and the culture of India. In this board, we had to teach them a lot about the cultural context of the employees, why their performance management systems have to align to the culture of the employees, which for them was a little different. They are a little more differently, mindsets, where we tell them that there's a lot of empathy. You cannot tell an Indian certain things in a certain way.
Yeah,
this is the way you have to treat them. I think they're very open to learn. And I think the cultural context in a board is very important, because then you get the right kind of outcomes and you have people who are happier. So for me, humanizing the board has been one of my key inputs and my own learning, because I believe in that. That's my own core value. So I tell them that culturally this may not be acceptable. So they listen.
Right.
They listen and they do take action on it. If organizations are doing innovation, transformation, what is the path for that? They have to be very careful about how their culture is and how the culture in India is. So that was a great opportunity for me there. Then, of course, having worked for a mining company, while I was not on the board, I was assisting and giving inputs for the board, right? There again, I was very happy to see that while the promoters were very actively involved, they did listen to the professionals as well. While they would take the decisions themselves, they were not, kind of stopping the senior management to give their views. And they also, one thing good about this organization, they liked young leaders. And they said young people come out with very fresh ideas. So this chairman, I must give him credit that he would bring in young people. In our company in Mahindra's, we had a shadow board where the younger generation used to shadow the senior members. So I think these are great opportunities if you're there in the right organization or on the right board. And today I'm on a board where I'm, of course, the chair of the NRC, I'm on the chair of CSR and part of the committee for ESG. I think these younger generation, if their parents allow them to, give them the opportunity to do what they want to do and expand the business, then the sky is not a limit for them. They can just soar. And I'm seeing it in this organization, which is Godavari Power and Ispat. The younger generation are very innovative. They are given the freedom. And the patriarch who's there, he wants them to do different things. He doesn't want them to be in the business. He says the business is there. That's your back-end support. But do what you want to do and learn new businesses.
Likes of Romaji went on to lead this and create paths that we can follow, all of you can follow. Learn more about how to be an independent director. Please follow the description. You will find the relevant links and of course the profile of the guest, and you can reach out for your mentorship advisors and others. We will continue the series of women independent directors and their story, their path and their future forward. Thank you for joining in. Thank you, Romaji. That was super insightful, and we'll meet again.
Thank you, Jyoti. I think it was also for me to go back in this journey has been a great opportunity, and to share my experiences. More important is the legacy that I leave. My mother always said, leave a good legacy. And that is something which I truly follow. RB Foundation is basically in the memory of my mother. Dear departed mother, who was a gritty lady, and I'm like her, but the spirituality came from my father. So that's a good combination, where storytelling came from your grandmother's feet, where you listen to all the stories of Guru Nanak and the Ramayana and things like that. So I think that has helped me in good stead to be where I am.
Thank you so much. You were watching Ether Features on EtherWire, your quintessential plugin.